Okay, hello everyone. This is a quick tutorial for playing a jump bass style accompaniment for the British folk song on page 163 of your textbook. This is in chapter 5. So this is example 5 on page 163. So I'll just quick give you a shot of that on the screen here. That's what it looks like. And we are going to be focusing on primarily the left hand and how to do jump bass. So just like the name states, you're going to be moving your hand back and forth between a chord and a bass note. So we are interpreting those chord symbols that you have there. So let's just talk about the chords to get started. In the first measure, you've got an F above the right hand melody, and that's just telling us we're going to be playing an F chord. Keep in mind, for each chord, we're always going to want to use only 3 voices. Sometimes chords with a 7th imply 4 voices, but we're going to just be choosing 3 voices always, just for uniformity's sake. Again, the first measure, this is the chord that we're going to use. Now, we also want to think about common tone voice leading for these chord changes. So for the second measure, a B flat chord is usually these notes, B flat, D, F, but we're going to take it from the F chord and we're going to use anything in common, which would be our F, and then we're going to try to take these 2 voices to the closest, nearest chord tones for B flat, which would include a B flat. It's great to use your index finger for this, and then your thumb to stretch it up to a D. So that's going to be our chord position for measure 2. Measure 3 brings us back to the F chord. And again, thinking of common tones between chords that are shared, the C going forward for measure 4, we're going to keep right here in our thumb, okay? The nice thing about that is it's going to force us to think about what to do with these other voices, and if we just take them down to E and G, we've got our chord, okay? Now obviously these are not really great finger positions that I'm showing you. These are good fingers to use, but having your hand splayed out like this is not what I'm recommending. I'm just trying to show you the notes that I'm playing, as this kind of position really obscures what you can see. So these are the preferred fingers, pinky, middle, and thumb. And then next line we're going back to F. Here's our B flat chord again in measure 6. Then we're going to skip the F over C at the beginning of measure 7, and we're just going to focus on that C7. Again, we had used this before for our C chord, and we're going to use this again, our third, because that tells us whether it's major or minor, so it's really important to keep that one in the C7 chord. And then the 7th we need because they're calling specifically for that. So if you're thinking, what are we leaving out? It's actually the G that we don't need. It's the 5th. And that really doesn't enhance the sound. Makes it a little fuller, but we can still have the same effect without it. We're preserving the 3 voices, and we end on F. So the next thing to talk about is the jumping part of this. Keep in mind that in order to make it jump bass style, we actually have to cover some ground moving back and forth between these chords. Try running this one time, just where you look primarily at the score with your eyes. See if you can focus your eyes ahead of you and not at your fingers. See if your fingers can kind of feel the distance between these chord sets without directing them with your eyes. Once you've done that, you're ready to kind of get into this next step, which is actually jumping. This is the easy part because at least you know what note to play. The F chord symbol is telling us we will jump and start from an F, and then we're going to jump up to that F chord. Okay? So I'm just going to divide this into 2 events for each measure. The first event is going to be on beat 1, the downbeat, and that's the chord symbol, F, and then I'm jumping up to our F chord. Now remember, our B flat chord is here, so I'm going to do B flat for the beginning of the measure and jump here for beat 3. And then here's next measure, 3. Here's the second half of the bar, or beat 3. And my C, I'm just going to go here even though it doesn't mean much of a jump. Those of us with bigger hands potentially could even do this, right? But this is acceptable as well, just a short little jump. Okay? Now let's skip over to measure 7. You've got C in the bass. That's what the slash means on the F chord. So the way that we're doing this, we're only going to have time to play the bass on the downbeat. So we'll play that slash C, and then we're going to jump up to the C7 chord for the second half of the measure. And then we'll finish like that. So again, measure 7 is C bass to start us off, C chord with the 7th in the middle, and then down to F for the 8th measure. So after you get a chance to put that all together with the jumping, the next thing you want to try is either singing the melody or playing the melody. Now when we're talking about that for the right hand, you can omit those whole notes that they have initially in bars 1 and 2. So I would just love to hear your right hand play that. Don't forget your B flat. Okay, now I'm going to play a version of this all together. You'll notice that my middle C, if I keep the melody in the register that it's written, it'll have some initial overlap with like that. So if you're not comfortable, you can always move the right hand up an octave. That will take me off screen, so I'm just going to stay in this register. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. And there you have it.